the Israel-Palestine conflict. Today I want to talk about something very, very important, and I want you to see a perspective of the conflict that is not very widely acknowledged and is not very widely seen that way. When we hear what the world is doing with Israel, how all the leftist groups, all of the pro-Palestinians, what they are doing, they are calling Israel of committing genocide, they are charging it with committing war crimes, they are charging it with violating international law, they are calling Israel of crime of apartheid, of killing so many civilians, killing children. They say, wow, Israel has already caused a very high level of civilian casualties, and most of them they are children and women. They never fail to mention that. Most of them they are children and women. And one that you cannot forget, ethnic cleansing. Israel is committing ethnic cleansing. And all of these things, you hear them repeated one time after time after time. The same words are being, the same accusations are being thrown against Israel. Well, what you need to see, what you need to understand about all of this is that these are not genuine accusations. These are demonizations. These are delegitimation attacks. So this is an eschatological strategy. For me, someone who have studied Marxism and socialism, one of the features of the Marxists, the socialists, the people on the left, is that they are eschatological people. What this word means is that they have a way to conceive the world and the society as a fight between good and evil. And they have this notion to understand things in simplistic terms, not in a well-simplified manner, but in a low-intelligent manner. In some people they are inherently good, and some people are inherently bad. And the eschatology is a structure of narratives in novels, in movies, in video games, and the psychology of the human mind is designed for eschatology. All religions are designed in the structure of eschatology. Why eschatology is born is because it's a simplified framework to understand things in the world. Well, for these people, one thing you have noticed is that the pro-Palestinians, they don't have arguments, they don't have reason. They just have a set of I call it phraseologies. They are phrases, they are words that they repeat. The occupied Palestinian territories, the innocent civilian Palestinians, and they repeat these phrases and these things time and time again. Why? Because their argument, their way to convince people of their ideas is not through argument, is not through reason, is not through argumentation. As right now what I'm doing here is argumenting, is explaining things. These people, they don't do that. The way they try to convince people of some ideas is by repeating them. Repeat, and repeat. This famous psychologist, Daniel Kahneman, he says in his famous book, Think Fast, Think Slow, repetition is one way to make people stick to an idea, even if it's not true. Because the brain does not distinguish very well between that which is familiar from that which is based on truth and reason. Only that is based on reason, based on facts, based on reference to the reality, is that we can take for real, for truth. And you need to back it with reason. In this case, explaining things, providing the reference. But if you repeat something too many times, you end up making people believing in something just because they hear it so many times. This is one thing that you're going to notice of the pro-Palestinians. You will see them repeating time and time again, the same kind of phrases, the same kind of words, keywords, the occupied Palestinian territories, the innocent civilian, Zionist propaganda. For example, there is a paper from 1957 produced by the UN and by a Palestinian. His name is Sami Hadawi. The paper is called Land Owners. It's a collection of distortion of statistics, the paper. But one thing that caught my attention is the introduction, the text that he brought, how he point out the arguments that the people in Israel argue, like when they say Palestinians, they are not native from the land. Most of them, they are immigrants from Egypt, from Syria, from Yemen. Many of these people, so-called Palestinians, and considered to be indigenous, they are not indigenous of Palestine. They are not indigenous from this region because they came from other parts of the Middle East. They came from Egypt, Yemen. And when you read this text in this paper, Land Ownership, Sami Hadawi, he just called it Zionist propaganda, pointing out that many of these so-called Palestinians, when he brought the paper, at that time, they themselves, they didn't identify as Palestinians. They call themselves Arabs, part of the Arab nation. And they don't identify with Palestine. They start to call themselves Palestinians after the 60s, after the 70s. But it's the way, in just a very small text, he repeats the word Zionist propaganda, but he does not explain anything. He does not provide any counter-argument to say how in 1909 a big group of Yemenis from Yemen came to Palestine, and it's a fact, and there is no way that you can contradict that. There is even photographies, there is all kind of proofs. He just called it Zionist propaganda. But what strikes you is how he repeats the same words again and again. In a very small text, he repeated 3 times. What this tells us is that these people, they don't try to convince others of their ideas by argument, by data, by reason. They try to convince people by repeating the same words, the same phraseology. And this is the very, very important message that you need to get about the Israel-Palestine conflict. The fraudulent, el fraudulento, ilegal, I don't have the words to describe it in English. The fraudulent, how they use linguistic in a fraudulent manner. All of these terms, ethnic cleansing, genocide, apartheid, they are not genuine accusation on its own. They are just simply demonizing terms. What is demonization? So demonization is one of the features that eschatological people use. Rather than using arguments, they try to demonize you. The best example of how the left demonize others is when they call you a fascist. You hear it, right? You hear many times how people on the left, they use this word a lot as an accusation against others. And they use it to intimidate others, to censor others, to shut them up so that they don't speak. Why they tell them you are a fascist? So obviously they don't mean that you are some kind of 1920 Italian from that old movement which already doesn't exist. Even if you take a definition like what is fascism, like when Mussolini say everything inside the state, nothing outside the state, then they themselves, the left, is a lot more statist than most people on the right, which are liberal, libertarians, and who they are the opposite of Mussolini was claiming to be fascism. Well, so what they are doing is demonizing you. In the word fascist is actually in our culture not such a negative word as Nazism. I mean, when I was studying all of this topic, I was struck by the fact that they choose the word fascism, and the reason is because this is something that they have been using from the 1920s, since the beginning of the fascism movement. And because it's a social trend, they have been calling any leader on the right, Ronald Reagan, Anthony Eden in the 50s, they call him a fascist. And they have been using this accusation not as a real critic, not as an argument against that person, but as a demonization. The demonization consists in you try to portray an image of the person that person is evil, is a demon, demonio in Spanish, demonio, evil, a devil, and the way they try to do that is they take words that they have a negative meaning in our societies. For example, in our societies is the word Nazism. But because the left were doing this much earlier than Nazis came about, that's why they choose the word fascist rather than Nazis. If they were able to go back in time, they will use the word Nazis rather than fascist. Well, so in demonizing, what they are trying to do is they are trying to sell to the rest of the society a negative image of that person, the country, organization, whatever the entity that they want to demonize. And the way it works is just repeating the accusation against that person or country again and again. That's why you see that they constantly repeat the same accusation: ethnic cleansing, genocide, ethnic cleansing, genocide. How do we know these accusations are fake, false, and they have no basis? Well, because it's just basic facts. Like during the Second World War, the Second World War was started by the Nazis. And when America and Britain fought back against that, in the process there were the death of 2 million German civilians. 2 million. Those are 200 times more than the ones in the war in Gaza. And obviously it was not a genocide. A genocide is when a group of people, they systematically arrange the killing of another group of people. But there are also some very, very basic facts to refute the accusation of genocide. Like in 1948, there was, when the State of Israel was created, it was attacked by the Palestinians and by the Arabs. After the war finished, Israel didn't kill all of the Arab Palestinians that live inside Israel. From the beginning, Israel always was compromised with the purpose of respecting the Arab lives. Totally the opposite. The Palestinians did the opposite. They spend their time and they work to attack always Israelis and Jews. They always were initiating every war against them. Well, so 1948, there are 160,000 Arab Palestinians living inside Israel. By the 1990s, there is 1 million. That small population has grown a lot. And by today, that number has grown to 2,100,000. This is the opposite of ethnic cleansing and genocide, is ethnic fertilizing. You know, the thing is that the growth rate of the Arab Palestinians inside Israel is twice as big as the growth rate of the Palestinians outside Israel. Do you get it? Rather than ethnic cleansing, rather than genocide, is the complete opposite. Is ethnic fertilizing. You grow the population a lot more in Israel than outside Israel. And that's the reality of these Arab Palestinians. This is when you come to see the great fraud, the great lies that the leftists they do against Israel, the pro-Palestinians, the Arabs. What we have in the Israel-Palestine conflict, we have two kinds of narcissists, the left narcissist and the Arab narcissist. When I started to study, I thought, because I come from the tradition of studying leftism, I thought that all the lies have been created by the leftists, because they always have been doing this of the fascist accusation. And what I discovered is that no, it was the Arab Palestinians who created most of the lies. All of these lies, all of the big lies, occupation, ethnic cleansing, genocide, all of these lies, they have been created in modern times, in the second half of the 20th century. Before the creation of Israel, before 1948, they just simply attacked Israel. There was no lies justifying their violence. They what is the original reason why the Arab Palestinians they attack the Jews and Israelis? The reason is because they are I found three reasons. One is Islamic imperialism. They have this vision that the whole Middle East belongs to them, and therefore they have a violent attitude towards Israel just because they don't accept it. That's their mindset. I don't accept you, I go attack you. But on the other side is because the Middle East on itself is violent. They are violent by itself. I came across some research how the very nomadic societies and where the economic conditions they are hostile, like the Middle East is very dry, the resources are scarce, water is scarce. The result of this scarcity is that people they end up fighting between each other in order to get the resources, and this is the reason why the Middle East is so violent. And there are so many lies. There are one lie that says that all of the violence in the Middle East is because of Israel. Such a preposterous and ridiculous statements. I mean, even all the problems of the world are the fault of Israel. Can you really see the absurdity? But this is the left and this is the Arabs. They create these absolutely absurd statements, affirmations, and they go and say it, and they say all the violence in the Middle East is Israel's fault. They say no, because before the creation of Israel, the Middle East was a quiet place. Such a lie. It was so violent. There was so many attacks against pilgrims, tourists. There is so many stories of attacks. They kill between each other. They kill between the families. Why do you think Saudi Arabia is called Saudi Arabia? When we talk about the Arab revolt during the First World War, it was not the Arabs who revolted. It was only the Hashemite tribes from interior Arabia. When Britain went in to settle the Middle East, it gave the land to the Hashemites. Arabia was given to the Hashemites. But the Saud, which is it was another tribe, another family, went in to fight against the Hashemites. They killed them, they took the land, and Arabia is now called Saudi Arabia. Such a lie that they say that the Middle East was a quiet place before the creation of Israel. Big lies. Well, most of these big lies, ethnic cleansing, occupation, genocide, most of these they have been created in the past 20-30 years. I have been studying and tracking when and where were created and who created them. I will publish all of this in a book. I am writing in Spanish because I'm Spanish. I'm in Spain right now. Beautiful sunlight. I will publish first the book in Spanish and then I will translate it to English and go and promote it. It's going to be very useful and it's going to help a lot to do this fight for not just Israel but for global justice. What they are doing is so unfair. So this is the key thing that we need to understand. These are not genuine accusations. They sound like an accusation when they say genocide, ethnic cleansing, apartheid, but this is not an accusation. This is an attack, a delegitimization attack. They are trying how demonization works. Demonizing attacks, they work by appealing to the emotional psychology in the human mind. So humans, one of the ways that humans create knowledge in their mind is by connecting things, by connecting ideas, by association. The more rational thinker that you become, the less power that this effect has. But for low intelligent people, for kids in the university, for all kind of young people, they are very vulnerable, they are very weak on this and they are very easy to be deceived and manipulated. Demonizing works by you launch the accusation, you use a negative word like Nazi and you say this person is a Nazi. So you are creating a link between the person and the word Nazi. The left use fascist. They try to create a link between fascist and the person. In the case of Israel, they have a whole list of demonizing words like genocide, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and they just throw these accusations so that there is a link created between Israel and genocide. Someone who studied, someone who asked himself, what is genocide? Genocide is the top of the crimes. Is when a group of people, they go and systematically kill another whole group of people, which is the opposite which Israel is doing. Israel has created the conditions in which Arab Palestinians, they flourish twice as fast inside Israel than outside. So it's the opposite to genocide. There is no systematic killing, there is no even massacres. But what you always have is that Israel is the victim, that the Palestinians, they are the bad guys. They are the ones who they are always attacking Israel. But for the average uninformed and weak rational thinker, young people, they fall victims of these demonizations. I remember when I was 18-year-old, there was so much propaganda created by the socialist Venezuela of Hugo Chavez, and there were a lot of video documentaries made by them, which at that time I never knew, and they pump those documentaries through all kind of websites. So I end up swallowing many of that socialist propaganda. Many of that they talk about the US imperialist, George Bush, the biggest imperialist of all. And I really had a negative image of Bush and the US at that time because of this. I did not have a special negative view of the US. I did not have a super positive view. After I studied the history of socialism and how the US fought against socialism, socialism represented a new middle age for the world, a new dark age. Socialism will have seen the whole world into a middle age, into a dark age, because that's what they do. They eliminate the key for societies to flourish is freedom. Not only that you need freedom for economic wealth to happen, but you need freedom of thinking, freedom of expression, free speech for the society to function. And because socialism, it was all against that, then they would have seen all the societies that were under socialist dictatorship, they were effectively living in a dark age. There was no flow of information, they were completely stagnant, there was no progress, no flourishing. All left movements, they are the daughter of the right, they are the daughter of capitalism. When they created videos, when they create all of the propaganda, young people, they end up falling victim of this manipulation and they end up believing all of that. I used to have that negative view of the US, and I always have like a feeling like you shouldn't be too close with the US, you shouldn't have a very close idea with the US. The US is a great nation, it's the greatest nation in the world. They fought to stop the dark age that would have been socialism. I will write a whole thesis on all of this later on time when I have time to write down everything. So demonizations do not work with people who they have the time to study. They are critical thinkers and they question things. But just a few days ago here in Spain, I met some guys from the university and I was telling them that I was writing a book over the Israel-Palestine conflict, and I asked them what were their views, and one of them, he studied biochemistry. Think on that. Very rational thinking consuming degree that you require good doses of thinking, rationality. And he was saying to me that Israel was committing genocide. So convinced. I say to him, then why you don't call genocide when 200 kilometers up to the north, Syria is killing 600,000 civilians? That is a really powerful argument. I mean, you have two situations where in Syria there is 20 or 30 times more people killed than in the war in Gaza. And in the case of Syria, you don't have the case where one side attacked the other, creating a massacre, killing the 1,400 civilians that were killing Israel. I mean, it is so preposterous and ridiculous, the accusation of genocide. But they don't know how old was he. Maybe he was around 23-year-old. What kind of weakness perpetuates our societies? What kind of lack of moral stance? Stop and do not let others to deceive you and manipulate you. Go look for the information yourself, think for yourself, use your rational thinking. If it's the accusation of genocide, the biggest of all crimes, launched against Israel, when they have been victim of a massacre, and you don't use the same word against Putin, when in the case of Russia, you don't have the case where there was a precedent of 3,000 Ukrainians crossing the border to attack Russia and killing 1,400 Russians, which that's exactly what the Palestinians did against Israel. And you throw the accusation of genocide against Israel. Preposterous. It's because when I'm thinking all of this, I want to criminalize lies. And I'm thinking deeply on all of these things because the level at which the left unresponsibly and negligently is using freedom of expression is making me think, how are we going to stop this? As I hear in a recent talk, he was giving a lecture on the Israel-Palestinian conflict, and he said, a rabbi came to me and he said, why is Israel committing so many crimes? And I say to him, this the guy in the lecture, he said, why did you kill your grandma? Everyone was shocked. I say to him, why you killed your grandma? I say, your grandma is dead, right? He says, yeah, he passed away a few years ago. I say, so why you kill her? People start to laugh because it's a preposterous, ridiculous accusation. He said it. The moment he gave the answer, he has lost the whole argument. So you say that it's a preposterous accusation that someone say to you, why you killed your grandma? But you are not thinking that it's a preposterous, ridiculous accusation to throw the genocide label against Israel. So this is the lack of thinking that happens in our world, the weakness, the zombies that humans have become, how they let their emotions drive, and the responsibility that the left plays on this fraudulent aptitude of demonization. Demonization is already a crime. We call the crime of defamation. When you launch a false accusation against something or someone, it's the crime of defamation, or calumnia in Spanish. I don't know how to translate to English. When you launch a false accusation against someone or something, a country, an organization, a company, you are defamating that person. You are promoting fake information about that person, company, or country. Recognizing Palestinians when they have never declared their renunciation to violence. It is absurd. It's so stupid. I mean, the Palestinians are the bad guys. They are attacking Israel every time. And you don't have a place in the world if you do not declare your renunciation to the use of violence as a means to solve problems. This is the basic principle that everyone who appeals to human rights has this obligation. Well, so these are all of the kind of things that I will write in the book. I will explain it, but I want you to have this clear idea. When you hear those words, genocide, apartheid, all of these big accusations, think these are no accusations. They are hiding a demonizing attack. They are trying to sell a bad image about Israel so that the people then they will have a negative feeling, and then they won't want to do business. And it's a way to exclude the country, to push them out. All of this is a fraud. All of this is a scam. They are using fraudulent tactics. They are using tactics that are illegal, that they are creating lies, fake information in order to create this negative image of Israel. Every time you hear these words, these accusations, think these are no accusations, these are demonizing attacks. I hope you found useful the video. Help me to spread it, share it, write me in the comments anything that you think how we should tackle all of this. The notion and the idea of criminalizing lies is a bit problematic for the challenge that poses against freedom of expression, but solutions must come out against all of this. And we should stand for Israel, we should defend justice, and we should clearly see who are the bad guys and who they are the victims. See you to the next video.